In a quiet town where nothing ever happened, two boys grew up side by side, best friends, inseparable, brothers by choice. But one rainy night, a moment of anger turned that bond into a tragedy that would haunt everyone forever. This is the story of Ryan and Ben. And the friendship that ended in blood, it began in a quiet town, the kind of place where people left their doors unlocked. And the biggest noise most nights came from dogs barking at nothing, streets lined with trees, bicycles leaning against wooden fences, the echo of a football bouncing against brick walls. On the surface, it was a picture of innocence. But sometimes, even the most peaceful corners of the world hide stories so dark that they stain the soul of an entire community forever. This is the story of two boys, inseparable friends. Bound by childhood laughter, shared secrets, and the illusion that childhood lasts forever. Their names were Ethan Carter and Ryan Miller, both 12 years old. Both from the same neighborhood, both carrying backpacks heavier with dreams than with books. They had known each other since kindergarten. To anyone watching, they were brothers in everything but blood. Ethan was quiet. The kind of kid who preferred sketching superheroes in the margins of his notebooks rather than speaking up in class. Ryan was the opposite. Loud, restless, always chasing attention. Where Ethan was the calm, Ryan was the storm. But together, they balanced each other perfectly. Their friendship became something of a legend at school. Two boys always together, riding home side by side, building forts in the woods, and whispering about growing up and changing the world someday. No one could have imagined that one of them would never come home. It was late autumn. The air carried a chill that hinted winter was coming early that year. On a Saturday afternoon, the boys decided to explore an abandoned construction site near the edge of town, a forbidden playground that adults warned them about but never secured. Rusted metal beams jutted out from the earth like broken bones, and puddles of rainwater glimmered beneath gray skies. To them, it wasn't danger. It was adventure. That morning, Ryan had woken up angry. His mother had taken away his game console after another fight about his slipping grades. It wasn't the first time. There were rumors at school that Ryan had been acting strange lately. Short temper, sudden bursts of anger, cruel jokes that didn't sound like jokes anymore. Ethan, being his best friend, tried to calm him down as always. He told Ryan that they'd just hang out, play, forget about everything. But anger has a way of blinding reason, especially in young hearts that haven't learned what to do with it. They left home around noon. Neighbors saw them walking together, laughing, Ryan kicking a can along the road while Ethan carried his backpack. It was supposed to be another ordinary day, but every story of tragedy begins like that. The towns. Police would later describe the friendship as volatile. Teachers had noticed cracks forming. Months before the tragedy, Ryan's behavior had grown unpredictable, his attitude darker. There were notes in school records about fights. A drawing that disturbed his art teacher, two stick figures, one standing, one lying down. Red scribbles between them. Ethan never told anyone what Ryan said during their late-night phone calls. How he sometimes talked about what it would feel like to hurt someone, or how he hated being ignored. Ethan thought Ryan was just venting, just pretending to be tough. After all, that's what kids do. They say things they don't mean. They talk big, but it's all imagination. Until it isn't. Ethan's parents noticed his unease. He had started waking from nightmares, sweating, mumbling Ryan's name. His mother brushed it off as growing pains. Boys fight, she said. They'll make up tomorrow. She'll never realize tomorrow would never come. By evening, the sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving the world painted in cold tones of blue and gray. The two boys were last seen near the old bridge, a narrow stretch of concrete spanning a creek behind the woods. A place where children used to play years ago, before it was deemed unsafe. A witness, an elderly man walking his dog, remembered hearing raised voices. Two figures arguing, one shouting, the other pleading, then silence. When Ethan didn't return home by nightfall, his parents called Ryan's house. Ryan's mother said he hadn't come home either. By 8 p.m., both families were searching. Flashlights cutting through the trees, voices echoing in panic. The police joined within the hour, combing the area with dogs. Rain began to fall, washing away tracks, blurring footprints. At 11:47 p.m., officers found Ryan sitting alone by the creek, soaked, shivering, staring into the water. His hands were covered in mud. When they asked where Ethan was, he simply whispered, "He's sleeping, just a few meters away under the bridge." They found Ethan's body. It was a moment that shattered the silence of the town forever. The scene was haunting. A child lying lifeless, his jacket torn, his backpack half submerged in the stream. There were bruises on his face, marks on his neck. It was clear that whatever happened wasn't an accident. Ryan was taken into custody immediately. But the officers who sat with him later would say that he didn't cry. He didn't even seem to understand what had happened. He kept repeating that they were playing, that Ethan had fallen, that he tried to wake him, but couldn't. The medical report, however, told a different story. Ethan had died from blunt force trauma to the head, inflicted multiple times. The coroner estimated the injuries occurred over several minutes. That meant it wasn't one strike. It was rage. Sustained, violent rage. By the next morning, the town was drowning in grief and disbelief. News spread like wildfire. A child had been killed, and another child was responsible. Schools closed early. Parents held their children tighter. Teachers gathered in silence in the staff room, tears in their eyes. The media descended almost instantly. Cameras, reporters, headlines that screamed child killer. The town that lost its innocence. But behind the sensationalism, there was a deeper question. How does a 12-year-old learn to kill? People searched for answers in Ryan's past. His home life was troubled. His parents had divorced a year earlier, and the custody battles had turned ugly. There were reports of shouting at night, broken furniture, and police visits. His mother worked double shifts, leaving him alone most evenings. The loneliness had festered. Ethan had been his only friend, the only one who still stood by him when everyone else avoided him. But even that friendship had started to twist under the pressure of Ryan's growing anger. Jealousy, resentment, insecurity, all boiling beneath the surface. For weeks, investigators pieced together what happened that day. The evidence was grim, but clear. Ryan had brought a small metal rod to the site, something he'd taken from the construction area days earlier. Whether he planned to use it or not, no one could say for certain. But the marks on Ethan's body matched the shape perfectly. During questioning, Ryan's story changed several times. First, he claimed they were play fighting. Then, that Ethan had called him a coward. Later, he said he heard voices telling him to make it stop. Psychologists were brought in to assess him. Their reports described a deeply troubled child, impulsive, emotionally detached, showing early signs of conduct disorder. He lacked empathy, struggled to distinguish right from wrong, and expressed no remorse. The court would later hear how Ryan had searched online weeks before the killing for phrases like how to hurt someone without killing them. He was 12. Ethan's funeral drew hundreds. The church overflowed with flowers, letters, and children holding candles. His parents sat in silence, eyes hollow. As the priest spoke about forgiveness, a word that hung in the air like something foreign, Ryan's name was never spoken aloud during the ceremony, but everyone was thinking it. His family received death threats. Their home was vandalized. They moved away before the trial even began. For the children who grew up in that town, innocence ended that week. Parents stopped letting their kids wander freely. The playgrounds emptied. Every friendship between boys suddenly seemed fragile as the investigation unfolded. A new truth emerged, one that no one wanted to face. Ryan wasn't a monster born. He was a boy shaped by neglect, isolation, and pain. But explaining it didn't mean excusing it. A child had lost his life, and another had destroyed his own. And as the police chief said in the final press briefing that month, we all want to find someone to blame. But sometimes the fault lies not in one child, but in the cracks of the world they grew up in. Part 1 ends here, the tragedy discovered, the innocence shattered. But the story doesn't end at the creek. The next chapters reveal the investigation, the court's struggle to define justice for a child killer, and the haunting question that lingers long after. Can a child who kills ever truly understand what they've done? The days after Ethan's death felt endless. The town existed in a strange, suspended silence, as if time itself refused to move forward. News vans still lined the narrow streets, the faint hum of their generators blending with the sound of distant rain. Reporters spoke in hushed voices. Outside the courthouse, careful not to disturb the raw wound that had opened in the heart of the community. Inside that courthouse sat a boy, barely tall enough for his feet to touch the floor. Hair uncombed, eyes vacant. His name was Ryan Miller. To the world, he was a child. But in the eyes of the law, he was now something else, a defendant in a murder case. The prosecution called it a crime of violence. Defense called it a tragedy of childhood. But everyone in that room knew there were no winners left to defend. The first hearings were held behind closed doors. Cameras were banned, not to protect the justice system, but to protect what little humanity remained in it. The judge, a gray-haired man with decades of experience, had never seen a case like this. His first words captured the impossible task ahead. "We are not here to decide whether evil exists. We are here to decide whether a 12-year-old boy can be held responsible for it." The evidence was overwhelming. Ryan's fingerprints were found on the weapon, a rusted metal rod recovered near the creek. His clothes, still damp when police arrested him, carried traces of Ethan's blood. A pathologist testified that the blows were delivered with deliberate force, not by accident, and the timeline placed both boys alone together. At the scene for over an hour, Ryan's defense team didn't dispute these facts. They didn't try to deny what happened. Their argument was simpler, and more haunting. He didn't understand what he was doing. Psychiatrists were called in, specialists in child psychology, behavioral science, and trauma. They spoke about the fragile architecture of a developing mind, how empathy is still forming at that age, how exposure to violence, neglect, and emotional isolation can twist perception. One psychologist described Ryan as a boy lost between fantasy and reality. He said Ryan's world had blurred boundaries: video games, online videos, and real life, all mixed into one. In his notebooks, he had written about heroes who fight to be noticed and friends who betray and must pay. He wasn't writing fiction. He was writing prophecy. Under examination, Ryan showed no emotional reaction to Ethan's name. He stared ahead, hands folded, lips trembling slightly, but eyes dry. The experts debated whether that was shock or detachment. One of them later said he looked like a boy who had stepped outside himself, watching from a distance what his hands had done. When asked why he hit his friend, Ryan whispered, "He said I was nothing. I just wanted him to stop saying it." It was a line that chilled everyone in the courtroom. The violence hadn't come from nowhere. It came from humiliation, from the pain of rejection, from a child's inability to understand that anger doesn't make the hurt go away. No pain compares to a parent sitting in the same courtroom as the child who killed their own son. Ethan's mother, sitting in the front row, refused to look at Ryan. Her hands clutched a photo of her boy, smiling, alive, frozen in time before everything changed. His father sat beside her, motionless, a man emptied of all color. Reporters later said that when Ryan's mother entered the courtroom, the air turned heavy. She looked broken, a mother torn between guilt and love, between horror at what her son had done and the unbearable instinct to protect him. When she took the stand, her voice shook. She spoke of sleepless nights, of working double shifts, of coming home to find Ryan alone, playing violent games until dawn. She talked about the divorce, the shouting, the slammed doors, the way Ryan would hide under his bed when the fights got bad. She said he was always so angry, but I never thought he could do this. And then she cried, the kind of cry that comes from somewhere deep, beyond words. The courtroom fell silent. Even the judge looked down. Outside, the town was tearing itself apart. Half of the community demanded justice. A life for a life, they said, regardless of age. The other half begged for compassion, arguing that Ryan was just a child, shaped by circumstances no child should endure. Talk shows debated it. Headlines called him the monster boy. Psychologists on television warned against that label, saying it stripped him of his humanity. But The truth was, the world didn't know. How to process a killer who still believed in cartoons and bedtime stories? Protesters gathered outside the courthouse with candles, some for Ethan, some for both boys. One sign read, "Two families lost their children that day." Another read simply, "Where were we when they needed help?" The law has no easy answer for crimes that live between childhood and adulthood. In most countries, the age of criminal responsibility is a line drawn in ink. But life doesn't always follow lines. The prosecution argued that Ryan knew what he was doing, that his searches, his preparation, and his repeated blows proved intent. They described him as manipulative, calculating, capable of cruelty far beyond his years, but the defense countered that Ryan was emotionally stunted, cognitively underdeveloped, and unable to grasp the permanence of death. To him, they said, violence was just another scene, a moment that could be rewound, reset, undone. The judge listened in silence, his hands folded beneath his chin, his eyes fixed on the boy who sat so still that the world around him seemed to move while he remained frozen. After weeks of testimony, the decision came down to a single question. Was Ryan Miller capable of understanding that his actions would end a life? The jury deliberated for 2 days. Some cried during the discussions. Others argued fiercely about justice, morality, and childhood. When they returned, the air was heavy with anticipation. Ryan stood as the verdict was read, his face pale, his body trembling. He was found guilty of manslaughter. It's not murder, a legal recognition that what he did was intentional, but not fully understood. The sentence, 10 years in a juvenile facility, followed by psychiatric supervision until the age of 21. Gasps filled the courtroom. Ethan's parents wept silently. Ryan's mother collapsed into her chair, spurring her son's name as officers led him away. The judge's final words lingered. This court recognizes that no punishment can restore what was lost. We act not out of vengeance, but out of hope that one day, this child may understand the weight of his actions. But for most people watching, hope felt like a luxury they could no longer afford. Juvenile detention is not built for children like Ryan. It's a world of cold concrete, routine, and silence. The staff called him quiet, obedient, almost invisible. He never caused trouble, never raised his voice, never smiled. He read books about astronomy, the stars, he said, made him feel small enough to forget himself. Therapists worked with him for hours each week. They said he spoke little of Ethan, but often of the creek. "It's still running," he once said. "The water keeps moving, even after it takes something away." Years passed. His handwriting changed. His voice deepened. But inside, he remained that same 12-year-old boy. Trapped in the moment, he struck his best friend and broke the world around him. The staff noticed something. Strange, Ryan never looked at his own reflection. Mirrors made him uneasy. He said, "It feels like he's watching me through it." He meant Ethan. Outside the facility, the town tried to heal. The creek was fenced off. The old bridge was torn down. A memorial plaque was placed near the spot where Ethan died, a small bronze plate that read, "In memory of a boy whose laughter once echoed through these woods." Every year on that date, Ethan's parents placed white lilies by the plaque. Some years, strangers joined them. Other years, they stood alone, eyes closed, lips trembling with prayers for peace that never seemed to come. The media eventually moved on. New stories replaced the old. But for the people who lived there, time remained divided before and after. Ethan's classmates grew older, finished school, went to college, built lives, but they never forgot. Many said they still avoided the sound of rushing water. It reminded them of the creek and of the day innocence drowned. 5 years after the verdict, Ethan's mother agreed to speak publicly for the first time. Sitting in front of a small camera crew, she said, "People ask if I forgive him. I don't know. Some days I want to, other days I can't. But I think about both of them, my son and the boy who took him. And I wonder if either of them ever really had a chance." The prosecution painted Ryan as a boy with anger buried deep within. They showed the messages, the arguments, the jealousy, that had quietly built up between the two friends. The defense, on the other hand, spoke of confusion, a tragic accident, a moment of uncontrolled rage that spun out of reason. Throughout the trial, Ryan's mother wept silently. She watched her son shrink under the weight of his own guilt, whispering prayers that never reached him. And on the other side, Ben's parents sat in unbearable silence, their faces pale, their eyes hollow, their hearts beyond repair. When the verdict came, the air in the room froze. The court finds the defendant guilty of manslaughter and sentences him to 8 years in juvenile detention.
8 years.
For one brief moment of madness. 8 years for a friendship that should have lasted a lifetime. Juvenile detention was not a place for healing. It was cold, isolated, and filled with the weight of regret. Ryan spent his first few months in silence, barely speaking, barely eating. He would stare at the walls for hours, lost in replaying that one terrible night. The counselors tried to reach him. Some said he needed therapy, others said he needed time. But Ryan didn't want forgiveness. He wanted to undo what he had done, and that, he slowly realized, was impossible. He began to write letters to Ben. Every night before bed, would sit at the small desk in his cell and write to his best friend. Letters that would never be sent. "I still remember your laugh," one of his letters read. "I hear it when I close my eyes. I wish I had walked away that night, Ben. I wish I had just let it go." He wrote hundreds of letters, each one a piece of his soul, trying to make sense of a tragedy that never should have been. For Ben's family, life was divided into two parts, before and after. Before, their home was filled with noise, laughter, music, and the sound of Ben kicking a football in the yard. After, it was filled with silence. His mother stopped cooking his favorite meals. His father rarely spoke. His younger sister would still set the table for 4, as if somehow, one day, he might walk back through the door. The community that once surrounded them with sympathy began to fade away, leaving them alone with their grief. People moved on, but they didn't. Every year, on the day of his death, they visited the spot by the river where it happened. They brought flowers and silence. The wind would carry the sound of the water, and for a moment, it almost felt like he was there watching, smiling, forgiving. Years passed. Ryan grew older, quieter. His hair darkened, his voice deepened, but his guilt never left him. On the day he was released, the warden shook his hand gently and said, "Don't waste this second chance, son. You can't change what happened, but you can decide what happens next." He walked out into the world, breathing in the free air that didn't feel free at all. The world had changed, but he hadn't. The media had moved on. The headlines had faded, but the shadows of that night still followed him everywhere. He visited Ben's grave quietly, without anyone knowing. He knelt, trembling, holding a small football in his hands, the same kind they used to play with after school. He placed it on the ground, whispering through tears, "I'm sorry, Ben. I'll be sorry for the rest of my life." He stayed there until the sun dipped behind the trees. No cameras, no witnesses, just one broken soul, mourning the boy he once called his brother. Tragedies like this never really end. They live on, not just in headlines, but in the quiet moments when we remember what was lost. The story of Ryan and Ben is more than a case file. It's a warning, a reflection, a mirror held up to the fragile nature of youth and emotion. It reminds us that anger, jealousy, and pride, even in their smallest forms, can lead to irreversible pain. As the years went by, Ryan began speaking at schools and youth centers. He didn't seek sympathy, he sought prevention. He told his story with a trembling voice, hoping that somewhere, one angry kid might hear it and walk away before it's too late. "I thought I was strong when I fought," he once told a classroom. But real strength, real courage, is walking away. In the end, a tragic tale. When a kid kills his best friend is not just about death, it's about the loss of innocence. The cost of one decision, and the haunting truth that sometimes forgiveness is the hardest prison to escape. Two boys who once dreamed of growing up together took two very different paths that night, one to the grave, the other to a lifetime of guilt. And though the world may forget, those who were touched by their story never will. Because deep down, every one of us knows that this could have been any child in any town on any night. Friendship is fragile. Life is fragile. And sometimes, the greatest tragedy isn't the death that happens. It's the life that never truly recovers after. You were my son before the world knew your name, and you'll be my son long after it forgets. Don't try to erase what happened. Carry it, so no one else ever has to. He folded the letter carefully and placed it in his pocket. The only thing he carried that had any meaning left. The first breath of freedom felt strange. The sky was wider than he remembered, the air colder, the light harsher. People passed by without noticing him, a blessing and a curse. He found a small room in a halfway house for ex-offenders, working nights cleaning offices. He spoke little, lived quietly, and avoided anyone who tried to ask about his past. But his past followed him everywhere, in whispers, in newspaper clippings. In the way people's eyes changed when they recognized his face. He often walked at night, through empty streets. Until he reached the edge of the city where the lights faded and the silence returned, he would stand there for hours staring at the horizon, whispering the same words, "I'm sorry." But the wind never answered. In his second year of freedom, Ryan wrote a letter addressed to Ethan's parents. It took him weeks to finish. He rewrote it again and again, never satisfied. The final version read, "I don't expect forgiveness. I wouldn't forgive me either, but I want you to know I think of him every day. I think of the boy who laughed when I fell, not because he mocked me, but because he wanted me to laugh too. I see him in every child who still has what we lost. I can't give him back, but I can try to be less of the person who took him away." He mailed the letter to their old address. It was returned, unopened. He never tried again. A year later, a filmmaker contacted him, a woman producing a documentary on childhood crime and rehabilitation. She wanted to include his story. At first, Ryan refused. He didn't want to be on camera, didn't want to reopen old wounds. But after months of persuasion, he agreed to speak, not to justify himself, but to warn others. During the interview, sitting under harsh lights, he looked into the camera and said, "People think the worst day of my life was the day I killed him. But it wasn't. The worst day was the one after, when I woke up and realized I was still alive." Those words became the centerpiece of the documentary. Critics called it the most haunting confession ever recorded. Avrus cried. Some forgave him. Many didn't, but Ryan never watched it. He said, "I've already lived it once." Ryan lived quietly, working in warehouses and libraries under different names. He volunteered at youth shelters, helping kids from broken homes, boys who reminded him of himself. He never spoke of his past, but he listened to theirs. One of the counselors who worked alongside him said he had a sadness that never left his eyes. But there was kindness too, the kind that only comes from someone who's truly suffered. He never married, never built a family. Perhaps he believed he didn't deserve one. At night, he would write letters to Ethan, letters he never sent. They filled notebooks. Hidden away in a box under his bed, one of them read, "I'm still trying to be the friend you thought I was." Years later, Ryan visited his hometown for the first time since his release. The creek had changed, fenced, cleaned, overgrown with wildflowers. The memorial plaque was still there, weathered, but intact. He knelt beside it, placed a white lily and whispered, "I'm home." No one saw him leave. No one recognized the man who had once been the boy everyone feared. He disappeared quietly into the fading light, leaving behind only silence and perhaps finally, peace. The tragedy that began with 2 children in a quiet town had now come full circle. The story was no longer just about death, it was about what remains afterward, the ache of memory, the possibility of redemption, the question of whether remorse can ever rewrite what's been written in blood. Ryan Miller's life became both a warning and a prayer. A warning of what happens when pain goes unseen. A prayer that no child should ever learn to carry such a burden again. In the final chapter of this heartbreaking story, the echoes of one fatal moment continue to ripple through the lives it shattered. A boy who once dreamed of playing football with his best friend now sits behind steel bars, lost in the silence of his guilt. and a family that once knew laughter and light now wakes up every morning to an emptiness that cannot be filled. Time has passed. But in the small town of Millbrook, the tragedy of Ryan and Ben remains alive, etched into every whisper, every glance, every memory that refuses to fade. The courtroom was filled beyond capacity. Every seat, every corner was taken by people who wanted to see the face of the boy who had taken another child's life. Ryan entered, his head bowed, wrists trembling in the cuffs. He was just 14. Dressed in a simple gray sweatshirt, he looked less like a killer and more like a lost boy caught in a nightmare he couldn't wake from. The judge, an older man with tired eyes, spoke softly but firmly. "This court understands that you are a child, Ryan, but the weight of your actions cannot be erased by your age. A young life has been lost, a friendship destroyed, and a family broken." The prosecution painted Ryan as a boy with anger buried deep within. They showed the messages, the arguments, the jealousy that had quietly built up between the two friends. The defense, on the other hand, spoke of confusion, a tragic accident, a moment of uncontrolled rage that spun out of reason. Throughout the trial, Ryan's mother wept silently. She watched her son shrink under the weight of his own guilt, whispering prayers that never reached him. And on the other side, Ben's parents sat in unbearable silence, their faces pale, their eyes hollow, their hearts beyond repair. When the verdict came, the air in the room froze. The court finds the defendant guilty of manslaughter and sentences him to 8 years in juvenile detention.
8 years.
For one brief moment of madness. 8 years for a friendship that should have lasted a lifetime. Juvenile detention was not a place for healing. It was cold, isolated, and filled with the weight of regret. Ryan spent his first few months in silence, barely speaking, barely eating. He would stare at the walls for hours, lost in replaying that one terrible night. The counselors tried to reach him. Some said he needed therapy, others said he needed time. But Ryan didn't want forgiveness. He wanted to undo what he had done, and that, he slowly realized, was impossible. He began to write letters to Ben. Every night before bed, would sit at the small desk in his cell and write to his best friend. Letters that would never be sent. "I still remember your laugh," one of his letters read. "I hear it when I close my eyes. I wish I had walked away that night, Ben. I wish I had just let it go." He wrote hundreds of letters, each one a piece of his soul, trying to make sense of a tragedy that never should have been. For Ben's family, life was divided into two parts, before and after. Before, their home was filled with noise, laughter, music, and the sound of Ben kicking a football in the yard. After, it was filled with silence. His mother stopped cooking his favorite meals. His father rarely spoke. His younger sister would still set the table for 4, as if somehow, one day, he might walk back through the door. The community that once surrounded them with sympathy began to fade away, leaving them alone with their grief. People moved on, but they didn't. Every year, on the day of his death, they visited the spot by the river where it happened. They brought flowers and silence. The wind would carry the sound of the water, and for a moment, it almost felt like he was there watching, smiling, forgiving. Years passed. Ryan grew older, quieter. His hair darkened, his voice deepened, but his guilt never left him. On the day he was released, the warden shook his hand gently and said, "Don't waste this second chance, son. You can't change what happened, but you can decide what happens next." He walked out into the world, breathing in the free air that didn't feel free at all. The world had changed, but he hadn't. The media had moved on. The headlines had faded, but the shadows of that night still followed him everywhere. He visited Ben's grave quietly, without anyone knowing. He knelt, trembling, holding a small football in his hands, the same kind they used to play with after school. He placed it on the ground, whispering through tears, "I'm sorry, Ben. I'll be sorry for the rest of my life." He stayed there until the sun dipped behind the trees. No cameras, no witnesses, just one broken soul, mourning the boy he once called his brother. Tragedies like this never really end. They live on, not just in headlines, but in the quiet moments when we remember what was lost. The story of Ryan and Ben is more than a case file. It's a warning, a reflection, a mirror held up to the fragile nature of youth and emotion. It reminds us that anger, jealousy, and pride, even in their smallest forms, can lead to irreversible pain. As the years went by, Ryan began speaking at schools and youth centers. He didn't seek sympathy, he sought prevention. He told his story with a trembling voice, hoping that somewhere, one angry kid might hear it and walk away before it's too late. "I thought I was strong when I fought," he once told a classroom. But real strength, real courage, is walking away. In the end, a tragic tale. When a kid kills his best friend is not just about death, it's about the loss of innocence. The cost of one decision and the haunting truth that sometimes forgiveness is the hardest prison to escape. Two boys who once dreamed of growing up together took two very different paths that night, one to the grave, the other to a lifetime of guilt. And though the world may forget, those who were touched by their story never will. Because deep down, every one of us knows that this could have been any child in any town on any night. Friendship is fragile. Life is fragile. And sometimes, the greatest tragedy isn't the death that happens. It's the life that never truly recovers after.